indeed a pleasure to be on this keynote speakers platform along with Dr. Sean Turkey. We both know each other for more than almost about 2 decades, and it is providence that we happen to share platforms most of the time whenever Chemtech is organizing a conference or a seminar. And he has given a very good perspective under the area which is in his control on our state of Maharashtra with respect to the status of pollution, the initiatives taken by the government, and very importantly, the NPCB's evolving standards to treat water to a standard where it can be reused and recycled. So I'll start with the innovations as the topic which has been given to me as a keynote speaker. And I'll just take you through the market drivers for innovations in water business. In shaping direction of technology and strategies that are increasing water scarcity, and very importantly, transitions toward a circular economy of water. And here I would like to emphasize circular economy of water. As the world is slowly coming to realize that we need to innovate in water and waste treatment technologies in areas of resource recovery, water reuse, and efficiency in water management practices. So this essentially is the heart of my presentation, that where exactly the world is looking at in terms of innovating or applying practices that are sustainable towards the circular economy vision in the world. And of course, the population growth, which is straining food chain and leading to more crop or drop measures. We should not forget that agriculture, particularly in India, accounts for 85% of water consumption. And even a drop saved by each user of water in agriculture can make a big difference in terms of water availability and mitigating scarcity. So these are the market drivers which I'm looking at. So the game-changing technologies in water sector for the next 10 years will be in areas of resource recovery. Because as we graduate from water treatment to water recycle, it's very important that we consider recovery of resources like phosphorus from sewage, hydrogen, carbon dioxide. And all of us know that CO2 is a building block for more than 55% of the commodities we use, and a lot of work is done of capturing carbon dioxide also during the waste treatment process. We move from liquid discharge technology to affordable ZLD nanotechnology, because right the application of ZLD is fairly constrained due to the high capex and also the operating costs associated with current ZLD technology. So the driver and the new technologies will address how we can make more affordable. Very important, advanced biological processes where the cost of energy savings, even aerobic processes actually consumes about 60% of the cost associated with aerobic treatment or a full-fledged waste treatment, and enhancing energy production through in anaerobic reactor design. So from energy user concept to treat waste, innovations look at how energy can be produced as surplus while treating waste. Surfactant and absorbent chemistry, the nanoplatform to support physicochemical treatment of water and wastewater, through which sustainability is addressed, because most of these chemicals after treatment of the waste go down to the supply chain or the food chain that we know about. And all of this backed by digital methods using advanced algorithms to deliver innovation at affordable cost to consumers. So these are the game changer innovations that the industry is looking to practice in the coming 10 years. Now, the classification of innovations are cross-cutting between drinking water, wastewater, surface water, and groundwater. So this is a big advantage to practitioners of innovative development, that its application can overlap a broad spectrum of water or water treatment. Innovations will be classified under core technologies, where innovations are applied continuously to existing technologies. In short, what I mean to say is from something that we are doing to better process, technology, products, and emerging technologies where it's not available, so from nothing to something. Now let's look at each of these innovations through examples and the practice that is currently put into place through a synergetic partnership between a developer of innovation and a user of the innovation for applications in resource recovery. One of the most interesting concepts is to recover oil, as all of us know that particularly in the industrial waste treatment, when it comes to steel, refinery, petrochemical, oil constitutes to be a major constituent. And within this, the very difficult portion to be treated is the emulsified oil, because it contributes to a fairly high proportion of organic or PO during the treatment process. So volumes would be less, but its magnitude in terms of load significantly very high. And it is here this innovative technology using oleophilic resin, because all of us are aware that so the ion exchanges which are used being analyzer have to be hydrophilic, because they have to treat water, and process of treating water and during the kinetics, they need to have a hydrophilicity in their matrix. Whereas here we are talking about a resin structure which will absorb oil on its surface. And as you see here, this is the ion exchange resin bed. This is the oleophilic ion exchange resin. What you see is an upflow of an effluent bearing emulsified oil, and also some amount of free oil that goes through the resin bed. And what you see here is the coalescing effect taking place in the second stage, in the secondary coalescing zone, and concentrating the oil from the top of the vessel. Very importantly and very interestingly, the backwash of this resin, the oleophilic resin bed, is done through water. So you are not using salt, you are not using acids, you are not using alkalis, you are just using demineralized water, making the process extremely clean, and in order to treat oil contaminated stream and separating it out. So this is generally used as a polisher, and as you would see here that for most of the refining units in the crude oil feed system, the oil levels are about 10 ppm, because most of the oil is initially removed in oil treatment processes like APIs or TPIs or DAS, or in many cases it's a physicochemical separation, or it's an adsorption process using activated carbon. But still you need to polish off a fair amount of oil from the condensate which come out of the refining unit, which otherwise is having extremely good purity and is also very highly priced, except that it is contaminated with oil. And you can see that in using this oil coalescer separation process, the oil at the outlet is less than 1. Our experience of setting up 3 large oil coalescer units in the industry show that the oil is actually less than about 0.2 ppm. The second application is on concentrating emulsified oil. The first example that I gave you was for large flow rates, because condensates in refineries or a power plant, the flow rates are very, very high. But the problem of emulsified oil is faced by many a small scale industries, particularly those who are in the ancillary applications, and who are now not spared by the Pollution Control Board and who are mandated to treat their effluent. Most of these industries have oil-bearing effluent, like for example the auto ancillary units or the automobile units. So they use lubricants. These days they have moved away from oil-based lubricants to something like ceramic. If, for example, if you have got about 10 barrels of effluent with emulsified oil, using the ceramic ultrafiltration system, you can concentrate it to 1 barrel, and you can recover 9 barrels of good clean water. Has the slide moved, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then there are specialty membranes which are also available for treating a variety of process fluids. Like for example, polyvinyl alcohol, which is very widely used for sizing applications in the paper industry as well as in the textile industry. So it's very difficult to destruct in a biological process plant. And here again, applying the concept of recovery, specialty membranes have been developed, processes have been developed to recover polyvinyl alcohol from coating slips, both in the paper industry as well as for the textile industry. There are a few other examples of recovery of dyes, dye desalting applications in the textile industry. And in the refined sugar process, recovery of brine, which is used for regenerating ion exchange columns, which purify or decolorize sugar syrup or sugar melts. So these are examples of product recovery, be it oil or be it process contaminants that go into the effluent. By recovering the product, the efficiency of the whole process also improves, and the downstream treatment of the waste becomes easier because all these constituents contribute to a very high load of COD and BOD. Now, there are also innovations in the biological process. And as I told you that one of the most important aspects within the whole biological process is the development of a high rate anaerobic reactor. We are all aware that anaerobic reactors have been used for treating industrial as well as municipal solid waste. They are also used in a small amount in treating municipal liquid waste, but not anymore. And whereas in the industrial applications, variants of anaerobic treatments like CSTR, USB have been used, but the workhorse remains the USB reactor. So an innovation which has been applied over here is the design of what we call as the tall reactor. The advantage of the tall reactors are that they beat the concept of space, because conventionally anaerobic reactors were designed at an organic loading rate of about 5 kg COD per meter cube volume of anaerobic reactor, and they occupied a very large space. Now you could design this for about 20 meter cube organic loading or 25 meter cube organic loading in specific cases with very high velocity in two-phase preparation taking place within the same reactor, and the reactor is having a height of something like about 20 meters. So you have higher organic loading, you have better destructions of the organic taking place, you have lesser footprint, and you have more efficient means to treat high strength organic waste coming from paper, petrochemical, breweries, distilleries, etc., and also producing more amount of biogas in the treatment process. And as far as the solid waste is concerned, I talked about, for sludge digestion in the municipal solid waste, anaerobic digesters have been applied. Dr. Somtake talked about the Koradi plant, where the sludge coming out of the biological process is treated in an anaerobic digester, and then subsequently it is converted into energy, supplementing the needs of the SDR or the aerobic process. Here is a concept which combines sludge coming from a biological waste treatment plant along with the kitchen waste and producing pure water, renewable energy, and organic fertilizer. So here is an application of resource recovery once again, where you treat a combination of waste, the solid and the liquid waste, and then you recover water, energy aside, and organic fertilizer. So in short, you are not discharging anything to the environment. And this becomes a classic example of circular economy in waste management. There are innovations in the membrane processes, which I would now like to talk about. As all of us know that membranes have been extensively applied to treat municipal, but more importantly, the industrial waste. Initially, it became an application process to recycle water. Later on, it became zero liquid discharge. And as I said in my opening remark, the driver, as we see, is to go to affordable zero liquid discharge. So this is the conventional way with this industrial effluent is treated in an equalization tank, lime soda softening to remove calcium, magnesium, silica, which otherwise limit the performance of the downstream membrane. sand filter, carbon filter, ultrafiltration to remove suspended solids, colloids, etc. Thereby, to membrane processes, where in two stage one can recover close to about 85% water in most cases, starting with something like about 0.5 to 2% concentration of TDS, ending at about 6,000 to 80,000 ppm of RO rejects after 85% recovery. In many cases, this can be discharged. In most cases, as it is applied presently, this 6 to 8% TDS goes to a downstream evaporator, beginning with evaporation process, which concentrates it up to about 26% to the saturated level of sodium chloride, and then subsequently going to a crystallizer in order to recover more condensate and effectively have something like about 95 to 98% recovery. But in this process, as all of us know, the cost of the evaporator is phenomenal. It's very high in capex and very, very high in OPEX. Just to quantify the OPEX, a typical treatment cost with this sort of a scenario is somewhere between 600 to 800 rupees a meter cube. All of us know that in the preceding stage of membrane processes, the cost would be anywhere between 15 to 50 rupees a meter cube. And in the preceding cost can be something like about 7 to 8 rupees a meter cube. So as we concentrate further, the cost goes up, but this becomes the most expensive part of the ZLD. So in order to reduce the ZLD cost, membranes like nanofiltration, ultra-high CRO by companies like DuPont Dow have been introduced, and they have also been applied to further concentrate the RO rejects to about 10 to 20% TDS, thereby reducing the size of the evaporator and crystallizer. But like the preceding brackish water and the seawater RO membrane, this membrane also has a very high energy profile. So the advantages of being able to concentrate the feed TDS and reducing the size of evaporator is generally offset by the higher operating or the energy requirement of these units. So the innovation that has happened now is in areas of low pressure membranes through application of forward osmosis or osmotically assisted reverse osmosis or all membrane brine concentrator. These are the three variants which have come into the market, one after the other, as innovations taking place in order to see that the energy profile to concentrate the rejects from the primary membrane processes is reduced, and you get about 12 to 14% TDS, which can then go to feed an evaporator, which is smaller in size, reducing the capex, and also significantly reducing the OPEX. So this is the concept of minimally zero liquid discharge. And supplementing this development processes are the manufacturing of membranes in India. Because one of the challenges most OEMs faced was imports of membranes, uncertainty associated with imports of membranes. And now this entire range of membranes, reverse osmosis, nanofiltration, ultrafiltration, MBR, are now available. These are made by Ion Exchange since last about 3 years. And these have been now widely accepted by most users in India, and they are also exported. So these are now available at extremely competitive price with minimal lead time, thereby reducing the burden on technology solution providers to store inventory and depend upon imports, and also to depend on the vagaries of prices associated with currency fluctuation or with the scenario related to petrochemical feedstock prices going up, or the demand of membranes raising the prices in the Indian market. So this all will go towards enhancing more innovation at an affordable price and cost to the users of water waste treatment sustainability processes. All going towards meeting the global goals for sustainable development in terms of clean water and sanitation, sustainable cities and communities, mitigating challenges of climate deterioration, where India is one of the signatories to reduce the global temperature to something like about 2 degrees and very importantly, recovery of constituents which can go towards generating clean energy, even through CO2 capture or hydrogen capture, and ensuring that the green energy is also available at affordable cost to drive processes used to treat water and waste treatment. So I leave you with this thought in terms of where the industry is working towards innovation, towards the goal of sustainable development in the next 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ajay Popat. Please stop the screen share so that we can see you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Let me do that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ajay Popat, for telling us more about the zero liquid discharge systems and the innovations that are coming in the industry that will help in reducing the TDS as well as the capex, and the innovations in the RO and low pressure membrane segment. We have a couple of questions. Let me just slide through there. Okay, so the first question is, Ajay, are there any commercial Andicos plans?
Yes, we have set up a very large project. It's running since last about 2 years. And this we have set it up in Hyderabad, where we are treating kitchen waste from Akshay Patra's largest kitchen in India. So we treat their kitchen waste. We also treat the sludge which is generated during the treatment of liquid waste. And this plant produces electricity for Akshay Patra kitchen, and it's in operation since last 2 years already. So it also integrates an odor control unit, because what happens is that when you are treating solid and liquid waste, that environment, there is a lot of odor. And here, as you could see, that it was very close to a kitchen, which had the highest hygienic standards. So we set up a very innovative, natural, automatic odor control unit. So it extracts all the odor, and then subsequently it combines these two waste, and it treats this and produces green electricity and also very rich organic fertilizer. This organic fertilizer, just to give you an example, is it's an ordinary fertilizer with the NPK value is available at about 3 to 5 rupees. The NPK content of this fertilizer is so very high, you can fetch something like about 15 rupees. So you get clean water, you get clean energy, and you get good fertilizer, and it manages your waste very efficiently. And we have now standardized. We have now standardized this experience, so we can give small compact systems to meet the requirements of housing societies, hotel industry, institutes like IT parks, etc., depending upon the number of people whom it has to serve. So it has now also been modularized and standardized by us.